Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. This episode is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, the home of roots music instruction. If you want to improve your playing, join me and thousands of other pickers getting better every day at pegheadnation.com. Hi, this is Matt and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bluegrass Jam Along. This is your Bluegrass Briefing for Monday, 15th of July 2024. And there's been some cool stuff on the podcast recently. If you missed it, have a listen back to the 400th episode, which was out last week, which was an interview with Chris Eldridge of Punch Brothers and Mighty Poplar, all about Baylor Fleck's record Drive, which he loves, I love, I know you all love. Really cool chat, really interesting interview about why he loves the record, but a deep dive on like what goes on in it and what's so great about it, and some things to listen out for, a bit of the history of it. Really cool. Always enjoy chatting to Critter, but that's a particularly fun conversation to have. So go back and check that out if you haven't heard it. And having hit sort of episode 400, just wanted to say thank you again to you guys for listening to all these episodes, all my guests. You know, the podcast sponsors, the guys at Collings and Peghead Nation. It's been a huge fun journey putting these together. I just want to thank everybody again. But there's more to look forward to, more on the way. Coming up this week, I have an interview with Roger Simonoff. And those of you who know a bit about acoustic instruments, particularly the mandolin players out there, will know that Roger is a luthier. He's written many books about mandolins. He's also a historian of the life and work of Lloyd Law, which is a very familiar name to a lot of mandolin players. And I've got a chat with him about Law's work, because 2024 is the 100th anniversary of those final mandolins that Lloyd signed in 1924. Some of the finest instruments out there, really. And so I wanted to have a chat with Roger about who Lloyd Law was, why those instruments are special, what was different about them, kind of celebrate the legacy really of Lloyd Law and the extraordinary impact he had on acoustic music. So that will be out on Wednesday. Still editing it, but it should all be done by then and be out. So that's coming up. There's some more really cool stuff coming as well, including a really fun announcement that I've got that I'll make in a week or two when the details are tied together. Then last couple of bits, just to all of those listening on Spotify, in case you don't know, there's a whole bunch of backing tracks on this podcast that you can jam along with at home for bluegrass fiddle tunes, and you may have missed them because they're not on Spotify. They're everywhere else, bluegrassjamalong.com. They're on Apple, all the other podcast platforms. Check those out if you need to, if you're missing out on those. And one final thing, 400 episodes in, if you like this podcast, please do take a moment just to share it with somebody. Tell your mates, tell people at your regular Bluegrass Jam. If you know somebody who likes one of the artists I've interviewed, send them a link, get them to listen. I would really appreciate it. But that is it. Let's continue and get on with the news and announcements bit, which we call Church Street News. First up this week, a couple of bits of news from IBMA, and the first bit is something called Roots Revival, which is a partnership between IBMA and the Banjo Gathering and Elderly Instruments. Roots Revival, a black string band symposium, and it's part of the World Bluegrass Business Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina this September. And it's being put together by Lillian Werbin from Elderly Instruments and Christina Gaddy, who wrote the fantastic book Well of Souls that you may well have heard me chat to her about on this podcast. And it's essentially to honour the foundational story of bluegrass music roots, talking about black string band traditions and the way that the music has been shaped and continues to be shaped. It's really important to kind of mention that as well. And there'll be 6 sessions across 2 days exploring black contributions to bluegrass and other traditional music, contemporary conversations about diversity and inclusion in traditional music, and the ways in which black musicians, builders and researchers navigate bluegrass and traditional music spaces. And the symposium is going to work to tell a more complete story about the origins and influences that shape the bluegrass genre as we know it today. And that's really cool. At last year's IBMA, the keynotes from Matt Glazer talked a lot about kind of the mix of music in, the early part of the 20th century in America, and blues and jazz and swing and rock and roll and bluegrass and country, and so much black music shaped that stuff. And so hearing a bit more about how that worked, how that continued, what's happening now, I think there's some really cool stuff going on now. I'm going to try and get some of that when I get out to IBMA. So yeah, that's the first thing. Second thing, IBMA is looking for volunteers at World of Bluegrass this year. And if you're interested in doing that, I'll tell you what you get for it in a minute. But essentially, they require you to work a total of 3 4-hour shifts over the course of the week. And there's all sorts of things you can do, kind of set up and tear down work for some of the sets and stages. You can be on ticketing, merchandise. You can be wandering around, chatting to people. There's myriad opportunities of different things. So whatever, you don't need to necessarily be the most sociable person to do this. There's lots of different jobs available. But if you are up for volunteering, you get free registration to the business conference. If you're volunteering during the business conference, you can sit on seminars and showcases when you're not on duty. You will also get free admission to the Bluegrass Ramble, which is all the gigs that go on in the evening, which are really cool. Free volunteer t-shirt, access to the volunteer hospitality area, and 1 lawn ticket for IBMA Bluegrass Live and the Music Awards show. Lots of cool stuff there. If you've got any questions about that, email volunteer@ibma.org. I'll stick that in the show notes. But I'll also stick a link in the show notes that lists all the sessions, how many spaces there are, gives you the sign-up info. So if you fancy going to IBMA and you fancy being a volunteer, then that could be for you. What else? Got some more news that is not IBMA related. A new album and an old album. Jerry Douglas has a new record coming, his first in 7 years, which is called The Set, which features 11 tracks, some new stuff and some stuff that will be familiar to fans of Jerry's, particularly a couple of tracks I noticed on the listing that are kind of transatlantic sessions related, which I'm very keen to hear because I love that show. Such a cool thing. And there is a track out now called While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Now, when I was at Transatlantic Sessions last year, Jerry introduced a friend of his who was going to come out and play, and he said, "This is Eric Clapton," and the whole audience went, "Ha, of course it's not," and it was. And Eric came out and played While My Guitar Gently Weeps with the Transatlantic Sessions band, and Jerry has done a version of this with his band for the record, so I'm looking forward to listening to that. The record's coming out on the 20th of September, so I'll remind you nearer the time. But yeah, new Jerry Douglas album, so that's a cool bit of news. And an old album, Alison Brown's debut record, Simple Pleasures, is getting a re-release on August the 9th. And it includes contributions from Alison Krauss, David Grisman, Mike Marshall. So really cool to see that back out again as well. So yeah, a new album from Jerry Douglas coming in September, and a reissue of Alison Brown's first record in August. And that is it for The Grass Is... No, that wasn't even The Grass Is New, was it? That is it for Church Street News. There's more releases in The Grass Is New. Stick around. Welcome back to The Grass Is New, which is definitely not Church Street News. A couple of bits this week. There is Bluegrass Sings Paxton. Now, I mentioned this a while ago. I put one of the tracks in the show notes, but the full record is out now, which is basically bluegrass people singing Tom Paxton songs. What's not to like about that? Includes people like Tim O'Brien, Kristen Scott Benson, Sister Sadie, Greg Blake's on there, all sorts of stuff. I will stick a link in the show notes and some stuff in the playlist. Have a listen to that. That'd be really cool. Aoife O'Donovan and Hawktail have been gigging together, and they're putting out a recording called Aoife O'Donovan and Hawktail Play All My Friends, which is Aoife's most recent record, and they've sort of reimagined some stuff from that in a more stripped down version, because there's quite a lot going on that record. Really cool stuff, but it's just, yeah, she's been playing the songs with them and reimagined some stuff. That's out on August the 16th, but there's a single out now that I will stick in the playlist so you can go and have a listen. So, Bluegrass Sings Paxton and Aoife O'Donovan and Hawktail Play All My Friends. A couple of things for you to listen to. And what's next? Next up is Scroll On Buddy. And for those of you who are regular listeners to the podcast, you will know that Scroll On Buddy is the bit where I've spotted some bits on social media and I'm sharing them in case you didn't. And 2 bits this week. First bit, there's a really cool video of East Nash Grass playing at Delfest. I love East Nash Grass, and I love this video, so I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes so you can go and watch it and love it too. Simple as that, really. And the second bit is, I mentioned a while ago that Tony Rice's Church Street Blues record has had a vinyl reissue. And somebody pointed out that Native American has also been released, Tony's album Native American, on vinyl as well. So I will find somewhere you can get hold of that and stick a link in the show notes as well, because I know people who like Tony Rice like a bit of vinyl. And I also know that part of the thing, I know Tony, from people have sort of mentioned that Tony wasn't massively enamoured with some of the CD transfers and the digital transfers of his stuff, and thought that vinyl was the best way to listen to a lot of it, particularly the earlier stuff. So yeah, if you are a Tony Rice fan and a bit of a vinyl nut, that could be for you. Final thing, what have we got left to mention? In my ears this week, what have I been listening to? And I have been listening to a new record by Christy Cox called Let It Burn. I'll stick something in the playlist so you can have a listen to. Yeah, really enjoying that. It's cool. But that is it for this week. All the usual stuff applies. bluegrassjamalong.com if you want to get in touch, if you want to jam along with some tracks, find some lists of all the interviews I've done, chord sheets, all the info is at bluegrassjamalong.com. But that's it. I'll be back on Wednesday with the Roger Simonoff interview, and I've got some really cool bits coming up over the next 2 or 3 weeks, as I always try to have, but I'm really looking forward to these next few, including one that I've been trying to get on for quite a while that I'm very excited about, that I'm recording this week. I'll tell you some more about that next week. I will see you all on Wednesday. Have a fantastic week and happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.